Simplifying square root and cube root radicals. So number one's kind of just a warm up because you should probably know most of these. The square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 81 is 9. This is 8. This is 10, 3, 6, 2, 4, 7. So those are basic square roots that simplify down to whole numbers. So those are just your typical perfect square roots. But in Algebra 1, you're going to have to simplify square roots that don't have perfect squares in their radical. So, for instance, on number 2. So number 2 says simplify the following square roots. So now we see the square root of 72 on letter A. The square root of 72 does not simplify to a whole number. In fact, if we were to take the square root of 72 in the calculator, I get this big old irrational number, 8.48528, blah, blah, blah. So this is not a perfect square, so it doesn't simplify wholly. So how we simplify this is by breaking it down. So we're going to break down 72 into 2 separate roots. So I'm going to kind of draw this template here into 2 separate roots where one of them is a perfect square. So we think 72, we think, okay, what multiplies to 72? How can we break this down into 2 separate factors where one of them is a perfect square? So I rewrote all the perfect squares off to the side here. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what is the biggest perfect square that is a factor of 72? So obviously nothing bigger than 72 is going to work. So 64, that does not go into 72. 49 doesn't multiply into 72, but 36 does. 36 times 2 is 72. So I can break this down as such. So the square root of 72 is equivalent to the square root of 36 times the square root of 2, because 36 times 2 is 72. And the square root of 36 is 6. So that's the answer. That's how we simplify it. We simplify it down as 6 root 2. Let me show you B. So we have the square root of 48. So we're going to break it up into 2 separate square roots. Now, what I need to put in there, I need to find the biggest perfect square that is a factor of 48. Now, you may think, oh, maybe I can use 4, the square root of 4. Because 4 times 12 is 48, and the square root of 4 is 2. It simplifies. But there's a bigger one. We want to do a bigger one. We want to get the most simplified we possibly can. So I think, what is the biggest perfect square that goes into 48? So I look at my list. I think, okay, 48. Well, 36 doesn't multiply to 48. 25 doesn't, but 16 does. 16 times 3 is 48. And the square root of 16 is 4. So the answer is 4 root 3. 4 times the square root of 3. That's it simplified. Square root of 45. Break it up. What's the biggest perfect square that goes into 45? Whoa, what happened there? The biggest perfect square that goes into 45. Well, 36 doesn't. 25 doesn't multiply to 45. 16 doesn't multiply to 45, but 9 does. 9 times 5 is 45. And the square root of 9 is 3. There you have it. That's how you simplify these. Trying to erase that. It's not erasing. It's fine. Wait, I'm going to use this tool. Okay. D, square root of 162. So that's a big number. So we're going to have to kind of start on our later down on our list here. Square root of 162. Well, the biggest square root of perfect square that goes into 162, if I look down on my list here, should be 81. 81 times 2 is 162, and the square root of 81 is 9. And let's just say you're not good with your factors. You're not remembering what multiplies to what. You're maybe not so strong with your multiplication skills. If you're not sure if 81 is a factor of 162, just take a calculator, do 162 divided by 81. And it comes out to 2, a whole number. So that means 81 times 2 is 162. Square root 20. That's a small number, so I'm really only working up here. 16 doesn't go into 20. 9 doesn't go into 20, but 4 does. 4 times 5 is 20. I'm going to use black there. And the square root of 4 is 2. So 2 root 5. Square root 32. Now the biggest perfect square that goes into 32 is 16. 16 times 2. So this would be 4 root 2. I'll let you do the rest on that page. The number 3, the concept's very similar. It's very similar, except now we have a coefficient in front. So just ignore that coefficient to start. So I'm going to write 3, and then I'm going to break up the 72. The biggest perfect square that goes into 72 is 36. 36 times 2 is 72. The square root of 36 is 6. So that 3 in front is just multiplied to the radical. So this 3 in front is just going to multiply to this 6 because the square root of 36 is 6. So this 3 times 6 is 18. This is going to be 18 root 2. So it's the same idea. That number in front just multiplies to the number that's simplified out in front. So the square root of 300, let me rewrite the 2. The biggest square root, perfect square that goes into 300 would be 100, because square root of 100 is 10. 100 times 3 is 300. So the square root of 100 is 10, so I have the 2 times the 10, which is 20. So 20 root 3. On C, square root 75, the biggest square root, perfect square that goes into 75 is 25. 25 times 3 is 75. So square root of 25 is 5. 3 times 5, negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. Letter D, I have 6 root 40. So let me rewrite the 6. Square root of 40, the biggest perfect square that goes into root 40 is just 4. 4 times 10. The square root of 4 is 2. So 6 times 2, whoops, root 10. 6 times 2 is 12. So 12 root 10. Square root of 18. 9 times 2. 9 is a perfect square. Square root of 9 is 3. Negative 7 times 3 is negative 21. And let me just do one more. Root 20. 4 times 5. Square root of 4 is 2. So it would be 6 root 5. So that's it. So plenty of practice. You can try those next ones. And then the same sort of concept applies to cube roots. So we're also going to be simplifying cube roots. So these ones are kind of just a warm-up. The cube root of 8 is 2. The cube root of 125 is 5. This is 3. This is 4. This is 7. This is 6. So that's just a number of them. So as we're doing number 5, we're trying to simplify these cube root radicals. We're going to have to use the same process. Everything on number 5, these are not perfect cubes that simplify down to whole numbers. Again, if you typed in like 24 and then try to take the cube root of it in a calculator, you get some crazy irrational numbers. So we're going to try to simplify it. So we're going to break it up into 2 separate cube roots. So I wrote all the perfect cube roots off to the side. So what's the biggest perfect cube that goes into 24. There's actually only one option because the only one smaller than 24 is the 8. So cube root of 8, 8 times 3 is 24. And we know the cube root of 8 is 2. So this is 2 cube root 3. So on C, I'm going to rewrite this -7. I'm going to break up the 54. So what's the biggest perfect cube that goes into 54? Well, 27 times 2 is 54, and the cube root of 27 simplifies. The cube root of 27 is 3. So -7 times 3 is -21, cube root 2. $375, that's a large number. 125 times 3 is 375, and the cube root of 125 is 5. So it's 5 cube root 3. G has a coefficient of 9. Write that out. Break up the 40. And again, there's not really many options here in terms of 40. 27 doesn't go into 40, but 8 does. 8 times 5 is 40. And then the cube root of 8 is 2. And 9 times 2 is 18. So 18 cube root 5. So yeah, that's simplifying cube root and square root radicals. And we're going to be doing the next few lessons are going to involve this as well. So I'll let you finish the rest.